I want you to just picture this scene for a second. It's 1856.
Oh, okay.
You're in California, and there is this butcher, just a regular guy locked in his room, and he is furiously painting these highly technical schematics of anti-gravity machines.
Right, which is just, it's completely out of nowhere.
Totally out of nowhere. I mean, at this time, Abraham Lincoln isn't even president yet.
Yeah, the Civil War is still years away.
Exactly. The vast majority of people migrating out to California, they're traveling by covered wagon, where they're dying of cholera, living in these muddy, gross tent cities.
Yeah, panning for gold in the dirt.
Right. And yet, here is this man, Charles Delshow, meticulously drawing up blueprints for what looks exactly like the modern military-industrial complex.
It's why.
He's detailing, localized torsion fields, chemical propulsion, state-sponsored black budget programs. It's like, it shouldn't exist.
It really fundamentally breaks the timeline of human innovation.
It really does.
Yeah.
I mean, we are told that technology is this very clean ladder, right? You've got the Wright brothers in 1903, Chuck Yeager in 1947, Apollo 11 in 1969.
The standard textbook progression.
Right. But then you stumble onto something like this and you realize, wow, the House of History has this massive hidden sub-basement that nobody talks about.
Yeah, and it goes deep.
It goes so deep.
Yeah.
So welcome to today's deep dive. We are speaking directly to you, the naturally curious learner, the person who doesn't just, accept the textbook version of events.
The person looking for those underlying patterns.
Exactly. The patterns everybody else just casually walks right past.
Well, our mission today is pretty ambitious, I'd say. We are drawing from the really exhaustive research of Walter Bosley.
Yeah, his stuff is incredible.
Oh, absolutely. Specifically, his work on the 19th century emergence of breakaway civilizations. And we're also pulling in the historical synthesis of Peter Levenda, Dr. Joseph P. Farrell, and a few others.
Right, pulling it all together.
Exactly, because we are going to completely rewrite the origin story of the breakaway civilization.
Which is a bold claim, I know.
It is, but if you're operating under the assumption that, secret aerospace tech started with reverse engineering flying saucers at Roswell in 1947.
Right, the classic UFO story.
Yeah, or even if you think it started with the post-World War II Operation Paperclip scientists. This research suggests you are off by an entire century.
Maybe even more than a century.
Oh, definitely more.
We are tracking a massive, highly concealed thread today. It starts way back in the deepest mists of antiquity with these ancient myths of extraterrestrial gods.
Right.
And then it runs straight through the blood and political maneuvering of medieval secret societies, pulling off basically the ultimate intellectual heist.
The greatest robbery in history.
Exactly. And it ends up in the 1850s in the mountains of California with this shadowy group of Prussian immigrants building literal anti-gravity airships.
While the rest of the country is panning for gold, like we said.
Yeah, exactly. So to understand how a Black Ops aerospace program ends up in the Wild West, we have to travel way, way back.
We do. We have to fundamentally redefine what ancient people were actually talking about when they used the word gods.
Right, because that's the baseline for this whole thing.
It is the crucial baseline for this entire framework. When we read ancient texts, modern scholars, they tend to view the gods through this lens of, spiritual or psychological metaphor.
Wait, sure. It's just poetry to them.
Right. But Bosley's research asks us to look at them practically. These were likely not these ethereal, omnipotent spirits.
Okay, so what were they?
They were mortal beings, either from an advanced extraterrestrial origin or perhaps an advanced, completely forgotten terrestrial civilization.
Okay, yeah. I mean, to a Bronze Age farmer, a mortal being who has, a mastery of physics and aerospace engineering.
And advanced metallurgy.
Right, that guy is going to be completely indistinguishable from a divine creator.
Exactly. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, right?
Right, the Arthur C. Clarke rule.
Exactly. But the vital distinction the research points out here is the geographic origin of these beings in the mythos. We really have to differentiate between the sky gods and the sea gods.
Which is fascinating, right? Because universally, humanity tends to look up to find its gods.
Yeah, always the heavens.
Right, the heavens declare the glory of the divine. In Genesis, you have the sons of God descending from the sky.
Ahura Mazda in Zoroastrianism literally depicted emerging from a flying winged disc.
Exactly. The Sumerians, the Greeks, the Aztecs, they all worshipped entities that came from the stars.
Right.
And, well, by definition, if you come from off-planet, you are extraterrestrial. But the sea gods are this completely different, much stranger category.
They really are. And, being extraterrestrial doesn't automatically grant you supernatural divinity, right? It just means you have a much better mode of transportation.
Yeah, better commute.
Exactly. But the sea gods present this profound historical anomaly. Look at Oannes, right? The Babylonian deity from the 3rd century BC.
Okay, Oannes.
Yeah, and he is directly equated with the ancient Hebrew god Dagon. The physical descriptions of Oannes in the historical record are incredibly specific.
How so?
Well, he's described as a being who possessed the body of a fish, but underneath the fish's head, he had a human head.
Okay, that's a very weird image.
And he had human feet attached to the fish's tail. And the texts say he would rise from the Persian Gulf every single morning to teach primitive humanity mathematics, the sciences, writing, architecture.
Wow.
Yeah, and then he would just plunge back into the ocean every night.
Okay, let's strip away the mythological awe for a second here.
Let's do it.
If you are a primitive human and you see a man step out of the ocean wearing, like, a pressurized, articulated diving
Yeah,
suit.
more like early scuba gear.
Exactly. A helmet with a viewport that maybe looks like a fish mouth and flippers on his feet, you were going to describe it exactly like that.
Of course you would. You lack the vocabulary for scuba gear, so you call it a fishman.
Right. It points to a highly advanced civilization operating out of underwater bases.
Yes, it really does.
Right. But here is my question with that. Why would a civilization capable of building deep-sea habitats or space travel spend their afternoons teaching ancient humans how to stack megalithic stones and forge weapons?
Right, why bother?
Yeah, were they just running some kind of cosmic charity?
And that is the pivotal question. The literature suggests a highly pragmatic, entirely militaristic motive here.
Okay.
It introduces the framework of a cosmic war.
A cosmic war.
Yeah, and this is a recurring motif across almost every ancient culture. This massive, devastating conflict between two factions of highly advanced beings.
Like the war in heaven.
Exactly. Think of the biblical narrative of Lucifer rebelling against the prevailing authority, losing the war, and being cast down into a pit or an abyss.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right. What if that abyss was quite literally the deepest trenches of the Earth's oceans?
So you're saying these beings operating out of the ocean are the losers of this ancient cosmic war?
Precisely. They are the vanquished faction. And if you are a defeated military force, banished to the bottom of the sea, and your victors control the skies, the high ground.
What's your strategy?
Exactly. What is your only viable long-term strategy? You cannot fight them directly.
No, you'd get crushed.
So you need a proxy army. You need a native insurgency.
Oh, wow. So they're recruiting us.
The research posits that these sea gods were basically emissaries from this banished civilization, intentionally bootstrapping human development.
Wow.
They were rapidly elevating our understanding of technology, metallurgy, warfare, so that humanity could eventually fight back against the victorious sky gods on their behalf.
They were military recruiters. They were building like a rebel alliance out of primitive humanity.
Exactly that.
And this concept of a vanished, highly intelligent entity sleeping beneath the waves, it isn't just confined to ancient Babylon.
No, it ripples all through time.
It really does.
Yeah.
We have to talk about the historical synchronicity between Aleister Crowley and H.P. Lovecraft.
Oh, this is one of my favorite parts.
It's so good because it proves how deeply this specific concept is embedded in our collective psyche.
Peter Levenda's analysis of this specific historical overlap is nothing short of staggering.
Yeah.
We're dealing with two highly influential figures of the 20th century here, right? Aleister Crowley, the infamous, highly controversial British occultist who actively tried to contact non-human intelligences.
Right, very controversial guy.
And then you have H.P. Lovecraft, the very reclusive American pioneer of cosmic horror fiction.
Right.
Now, there is absolutely no historical record that these two men ever met, ever corresponded, or read each other's early private notes.
Not at all.
Yet their work intersects on one specific date in a way that just defies statistical probability.
Okay, if you're listening, pay close attention to this timeline because it is crazy.
It really is.
The date is November 1st, 1907. On this exact night, Aleister Crowley is engaged in this deep esoteric writing session. He's producing a text called Liber Liberi vel Lapidus Lazuli. And in this text, he starts channeling or writing about this mysterious, horrific god of the deep abyss.
And he names it.
He explicitly names this entity Tutulu, T-U-T-U-O-U. And Crowley describes Tutulu as this gnarled, tentacled, fish-like creature linked to a black marble stone.
Yep.
And he specifically associates the awakening of this creature with a massive earthquake.
Okay, now fast forward 19 years to 1926.
Okay.
H.P. Lovecraft pens his absolute masterpiece, The Call of Cthulhu.
The classic.
Right. And what's the premise of Lovecraft's story? It's a massive, tentacled, fish-like high priest who is sleeping in a sepulcher in a sunken megalithic city at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean.
Wow.
And the entity's name is Cthulhu. Phonetically, it is almost indistinguishable from Crowley's Cthulhu.
It's exactly the same sound.
It is. Furthermore, Lovecraft links Cthulhu's psychic awakening to a bizarre Blackstone artifact, a global earthquake, and a specific orgiastic cult ritual that takes place in the swamps of Louisiana. And the date Lovecraft chose for that fictional ritual, November 1st, 1907.
The exact same night Crowley was writing about Cthulhu.
The exact same night.
It's unbelievable. But let me just pause here because I want to be perfectly clear with the listener on this point.
Yeah, good idea.
We aren't sitting here advocating that a literal giant green octopus dragon named Cthulhu is, taking a nap off the coast of New Zealand.
Right, no, we're not doing monster hunting.
Exactly. This isn't a monster hunt. Think of this phenomenon more like a cultural echo.
Right.
It's like hearing a very faint, distant air raid siren through a thick fog. Crowley, through his really intense occult rituals, and Lovecraft, through his hypersensitive, almost neurotic artistic intuition, they were somehow tuning into the exact same frequency.
Yes, that's exactly it.
They were picking up on a residual psychic footprint or maybe a suppressed historical memory of this banished underwater intelligence.
That is the perfect way to contextualize it. Whether you interpret it as a literal telepathic broadcast from a surviving ancient entity or just the surfacing of a deeply buried Jungian archetype.
Right, the collective unconscious.
Exactly. Regarding a lost, technologically advanced civilization, the outcome is identical. The trauma of this ancient conflict and the presence of this banished force, it left an indelible mark on human consciousness.
It really did.
But it didn't just leave a psychic stain, it actually encoded itself into the deepest roots of our language.
Yeah, this is where it gets crazy.
This ancient trauma birthed a specific word that serves as the absolute master key to our 19th century aerospace mystery.
And that word is NYMZA, spelled NYMZA or occasionally NYMSA.
Right.
Walter Bosley introduces the profound etymological work of this researcher, Harry, to break this word down. And when you look at the roots of this word, the entire narrative of the banished sea gods snaps sharply into focus.
It really does. Harry performs this basically surgical dissection of the word NYMZA, tracing its syllables back to ancient Egyptian and Proto-Indo-European linguistic roots.
Okay, let's break it down.
Let's look at the first syllable, NYM. Derived from the ancient Egyptian Nem. The primary translation of Nem is the interrogative who.
Who? So it's a question.
It is fundamentally a question of identity, and this root survived into ancient Greek as onoma, which translates directly to name.
Oh, like synonym or anonymous?
It's the exact root of those English words, yes.
Yeah.
Pseudonym, anonymous, exactly. So NYM establishes the concept of a name or an identity.
Okay.
But Harry points out that ancient Egyptian is heavily reliant on homonyms. Other words pronounced nem translate to sleep, a place of slaughter, and crucially, water or lake.
Wow. So embedded just in the first half of the word, we have the concepts of a name, a slaughter, a defeat, sleeping, and water.
Oh,
A
exactly.
defeated identity sleeping in the water.
Yes.
But the second half of the word is where the punishment comes in, right? The suffix ZA or SA.
Right. In ancient Egyptian, the suffix sa translates to the verb to cut.
To cut.
It implies a violent severing, a removal, a deliberate subtraction. You can even see echoes of this in the German word Zahn, meaning tooth, relating to the act of biting or cutting.
Wow.
So when you synthesize these syllables, NYMZA literally translates to the name that has been removed, or the nameless.
The nameless.
And the research stresses that in the context of these ancient beings, this was not merely a physical banishment to the ocean floor, it was a metaphysical, esoteric punishment.
So let me just make this esoteric concept really concrete for you listening.
Please do.
Think of your name, your identity, as your login credentials to the physical universe, right?
Oh, I like that.
It's your username and your password that allows you to actually interact with reality. In this ancient framework, if the victorious sky gods hold a war tribunal to punish the losers, they don't just lock them in a physical prison.
No.
They revoke their access rights. They strip them of their names.
That is an incredibly apt analogy. By having their names cut, these entities were effectively locked out of the material plane.
Wow.
They were forced into a state of living death, basically, banished to an astral or non-physical state.
Right, because without an identity.
Without a unique identity, you cannot independently manipulate the physical world. Therefore, to interact with our reality, to communicate, to teach humans metallurgy, to foment a rebellion, they have to use someone else's active login.
Oh, wow.
They have to possess the minds of living humans.
So NYMZA essentially means account deleted.
Yes.
The only way they can get back online is by hacking into a human host.
Exactly.
Which provides this stunning new context for the biblical story in the Gospel of Mark. You know, Jesus encounters a man possessed by a violent entity and asks the entity for its name.
Right.
And the response isn't, I am Baal or I am Moloch. The response is, my name is Legion, for we are many.
Because they don't have individual names.
Exactly. They don't have names. They are a collective nameless void. They are NYMZA.
It is a profound alignment of ancient texts. And this is precisely the mechanism Lovecraft described with Cthulhu, right?
Right.
A being physically trapped beneath the ocean, but psychically reaching out to manipulate the minds of susceptible humans across the globe.
It fits perfectly.
NYMZA is the ancient operational designation for these nameless ones. They are the banished architects of early human technology.
But they didn't just leave behind creepy psychic echoes and a linguistic puzzle.
No, they did not.
They left behind hard blueprints. Because if this civilization was as advanced as the theories suggest, human beings would have seen their technology, recorded it, and tried to understand it.
Yes.
Which brings us to the physical footprints of this lost science.
If we're willing to accept the premise of a highly advanced terrestrial or extraterrestrial presence in deep antiquity, our entire approach to ancient texts has to shift.
We have to read them differently.
We can no longer dismiss descriptions of flying chariots or devastating weapons as mere poetic metaphor or religious allegory. We must view them as primitive, observational attempts to describe highly complex technology.
And the Book of Enoch is the perfect case study here.
Absolutely.
For those who don't know, this is an ancient Jewish religious work, apocryphal text that was literally scrubbed from the canonical Bible by early church councils.
Yep, it was removed.
And why? Probably because it's too specific. Enoch describes a group of angels called the Watchers who descend to earth, specifically landing on Mount Hermon.
Right.
And what do, they don't preach spiritual salvation. They hold seminars on industrial engineering.
The text explicitly lists the technologies transferred to humanity. A watcher named Azazel teaches men how to make swords, knives, shields, and breastplates.
Advanced metallurgy.
Exactly. Weapons manufacturing. He teaches them how to make mirrors and cosmetics. Another watcher teaches meteorology. Another teaches astronomy and the signs of the sun and moon.
It's a syllabus.
It is a deliberate, systematic technology transfer.
And just like any sudden introduction of disruptive technology, it causes complete chaos.
Oh, yeah.
The text describes how this knowledge, combined with the Watchers actually interbreeding with human women, completely destabilizes the natural progression of human society.
It leads to massive warfare.
Massive warfare.
Yeah.
And we see this exact theme of technological disruption again in the story of the Tower of Babel.
Right. The traditional Sunday school narrative of Babel is that humans were building a very tall brick tower out of sheer arrogance, and an angry god scrambled their languages to humble them.
That's what we're all taught.
But Dr. Joseph P. Farrell points to the Mesoamerican equivalent of this story in the Mayan Popol Vuh.
Okay, what does the Mayan text say?
The Mayan narrative does not describe a tall building. It describes a moment in time, a specific threshold.
It's a Tower of Babel moment.
Exactly. The Mayan text describes humanity as possessing vast, almost limitless knowledge. They understood the physics of the cosmos, the shape of the earth, the mechanics of the stars.
They were basically a Type 1 civilization.
Right. And the gods holding power at the time realized that human technological capability was advancing so rapidly that it actually threatened their own supremacy.
Oh, wow.
So a political decision is made by the ruling gods to intervene. They don't just confuse their speech, they deliberately scramble human cognitive and intellectual progress.
How would they do that?
They alter our genetic or psychological makeup to introduce distractions, specifically a heightened constant drive to procreate in order to derail our technological ascension.
It's a deliberate system wipe.
Yes.
The server admins realize the users have figured out the root code, so they wipe the hard drives and install a bunch of bloatware to keep us distracted.
That is a brilliant way to phrase it.
But even with the system wipe, ancient people still recorded the vehicles these gods used.
He did.
If you look at the ancient Hindu epics, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, there are incredibly dense technical descriptions of flying machines called vimanas.
The descriptions of the Vimanas are astonishingly technical.
Yeah, they're not poetry.
They aren't described as magical winged horses at all. They're described as physical craft, often spherical, bell-shaped, or resembling a dome constructed from specific light metals.
And how do they fly?
The texts explicitly state they were powered by a combination of fire and mercury at the bottom.
Mercury.
Yes. Modern researchers, analyzing these ancient Sanskrit descriptions, have theorized they are actually describing a mercury vortex engine.
A vortex engine.
It's a form of propulsion that uses highly pressurized, rotating mercury plasma to create localized anti-gravity effects.
That's insane.
The texts describe these craft illuminating the night sky, hovering motionless, and then darting away at speeds that the human eye could barely track.
They are describing a classic UFO, thousands of years before the Wright brothers.
Exactly.
They even describe the massive, devastating weapons these Viranas carried, which honestly read exactly like tactical nuclear strikes or intense energy weapons.
The descriptions of the destruction are chilling.
But I have to push back here, because reading an ancient text is one thing. Words can be misinterpreted, they can be exaggerated over time.
Sure.
But physical carvings in solid rock are another. This brings us to the work of Anthony Peratt at Los Alamos, and I genuinely struggle to wrap my head around this part.
It is arguably the most compelling piece of physical evidence for the cosmic war theory.
Okay, tell us about Peratt.
So Anthony Peratt is a highly respected plasma physicist. His career was built at the Los Alamos National Laboratory.
Literally the birthplace of the atomic bomb.
Exactly. And he also worked with the Department of Energy. He is not a fringe theorist. He is a hard science physicist.
Right.
Peratt conducted a massive global comparative study. He analyzed ancient petroglyphs and relief sculptures.
Like cave paintings?
Rock art, yeah. Native American rock art in the American Southwest, Sumerian cylinder seals, Greek depictions of Zeus hurling thunderbolts, Aboriginal carvings in Australia. These carvings date roughly between 10,000 and 2000 BC.
And what exactly was he looking for? Because primitive rock art usually just looks like, stick figures and squiggly lines.
That's precisely what Peratt thought until he looked at them through the lens of a plasma physicist.
Okay.
In high-tech modern laboratories, when physicists generate immense electrical currents and pass them through plasma, the plasma forms very specific, complex geometric shapes.
Okay.
These are called Z-pinch instabilities.
Z-pinch instability.
Yeah. They are highly intricate, three-dimensional structures of glowing energy. Peratt realized that the squabbly lines and bizarre stick figures carved by ancient people, like the classic squatter man motif you find on literally every continent.
Yeah, the guy with his arms up and legs bent.
Exactly. He realized they are exact, geometrically flawless, two-dimensional representations of intense plasma discharge configurations.
Wow. But I have to challenge this. How does a scientist like Peratt rule out that these ancient people weren't just looking at regular lightning?
That's a fair question.
Right. Lightning is plasma. Couldn't they just be terrified of a really bad thunderstorm and carving what they saw?
Peratt addresses that directly. Normal atmospheric lightning does not form these specific, sustained, complex, multi-tiered geometries.
It's just a flash.
Exactly. The structures Peratt generated in the lab, which matched the carvings perfectly, require sustained, massive, planetary-scale energy discharges to actually be visible in the sky.
Planetary scale.
We are talking about energy events that absolutely dwarf any natural thunderstorm.
So, if primitive humans roaming the desert 10,000 years ago didn't have plasma generators,
Which they didn't.
how did they know exactly what a planetary scale plasma Z-pinch instability looks like? Yeah. How do you carve that perfectly into a rock?
The research presents three terrifying possibilities.
Okay, hit me.
1, ancient humans possess this advanced energy technology themselves, and the petroglyphs are essentially their engineering schematics.
Unlikely, but okay.
2, an advanced non-human or breakaway civilization possessed it and demonstrated it to humanity. Or 3, which aligns perfectly with our premise today. Ancient humanity was standing on the ground, utterly defenseless, observing the devastating plasma-based warfare of a cosmic conflict raging in the Earth's atmosphere right above them.
Oh my God.
They saw skies burning with sustained, unnatural energy structures, and they carved exactly what they saw into the rocks out of sheer absolute terror.
Wow.
They were documenting the fallout of the War of the Gods.
They were sketching the apocalypse.
Exactly.
And it wasn't just raw energy that existed back then.
Mm-hmm.
We have proof of physical precision engineering too. The Antiquity mechanism,
Oh, yes.
discovered by sponge divers off the coast of a Greek island, right? Dated to around 150 BC. It's a highly corroded bronze device, roughly the size of a shoebox.
Doesn't look like much from the outside.
But when scientists X-rayed it, they found over 30 expertly meshed, precision-cut bronze gears.
It's a literal functioning analog computer.
Right. Designed to predict astronomical positions and eclipses decades in advance. If an ancient Greek engineer could build a differential gear system in 150 BC...
Technology that supposedly wasn't invented until the 1800s.
Exactly. What else exists?
Which brings us to the most critical logistical question of this entire narrative.
How did it survive?
Yes. If this staggering level of knowledge, the mathematical formulas for plasma physics, the schematics for advanced aeronautics, accurate maps of the globe, if it existed in the ancient world, how did it survive?
Because civilizations collapse all the time.
Exactly. Civilizations fall, libraries burn. How does the physics of the gods bypass the Dark Ages and end up in the hands of Prussian industrialists in the 19th century?
Right.
It requires an organized, multi-generational operation. It requires a heist.
The ultimate Black Ops intellectual heist.
Yeah.
And the trail starts at the most famous repository of knowledge in human history, the Great Library of Alexandria in Egypt.
Right, and the conventional historical narrative teaches us that the Library of Alexandria was just a tragic loss.
Yeah, that it all burned down.
That it was burned by various conquering armies, Julius Caesar, religious zealots, and that plunged humanity into a dark age of ignorance because all that knowledge turned to ash.
Right, that's what we're taught.
However, Bosley and other researchers argue that the narrative of complete destruction is a highly convenient cover story.
A cover story.
The most vital, dangerous scrolls, the deepest secrets of alchemy, the mathematics and the cosmos, detailed maritime maps of the Americas long before Columbus, they were secretly preserved.
Evacuated.
Yes. They were covertly moved through esoteric networks and eventually consolidated in the Imperial Library of Constantinople, the heart of the Byzantine Empire.
Okay, so Constantinople.
Constantinople became the ultimate vault for the surviving source code of the ancient world, and it remained completely safe there for centuries until the year 1203 AD.
This is where history reads like a spy thriller. Fast forward to the Fourth Crusade.
Yeah, this is wild.
You have an incredible cast of characters here. Pope Innocent III, the really powerful Doge of Venice and Enrico Dandolo, and King Philip of Swabia. The official public narrative of the Fourth Crusade is that they were raising a massive Christian army to sail across the Mediterranean and recapture Jerusalem from Muslim control.
That was the PR spin.
Right. But the logistics of this crusade were intentionally compromised from the very start.
Right. Follow the money.
Exactly. The crusading army contracted the Republic of Venice to build this massive fleet of ships to transport them. But when the army gathered, they didn't have nearly enough money to actually pay the Venetians.
Awkward.
Very. So the Doge Venice, who is a brilliant and ruthless politician, makes a deal. He says, "We will forgive your debt, provided you use this army to do a few favors for us first."
Just a little side quest.
Right. And one of those favors just happens to be diverting the entire crusading army away from the Holy Land, sailing them directly to Constantinople, the capital of their fellow Christians, mind you, and brutally sacking the city.
The sacking of Constantinople in 1204 is one of the most controversial lines of the Middle Ages.
Yeah, it was brutal.
But the research suggests it was not merely a random act of unpaid mercenaries rioting. It was a targeted, highly organized acquisition operation.
Okay.
The vanguard of this invasion, the shock troops who led the assault, were the militant monastic orders. The Knights Templar and their Germanic counterparts, the Teutonic Knights.
And they weren't just there to steal, gold chalices and so.
While the regular foot soldiers were busy looting the treasury, the leadership of the Templars and the Teutonic Knights went straight for the archives.
They knew exactly what they wanted.
They extracted the surviving intellectual booty of the ancient world. They stole the blueprints.
They looted the server room.
Exactly.
And this stolen knowledge completely transforms the Knights Templar, right? Over the next century, they go from being a group of humble monks protecting pilgrims on the road to the most powerful, wealthy, and autonomous organization in the Western world.
Unbelievably wealthy.
They invent modern international banking. They build a massive naval fleet that answers to literally no king. But eventually they just get too powerful. The King of France, Philip IV, who is massively in debt to the Templars, he colludes with the Pope.
Right. And on Friday the 13th in October 1307, the hammer falls.
Yeah, that's where the Friday the 13th superstition comes from.
Yep. The Templars are suddenly outlawed, arrested, tortured, and their leaders are burned at the stake. But the knowledge they possessed was not captured by the French king.
It was too well hidden.
The surviving knights fled. Some of their fleet allegedly sailed to Portugal, but a significant faction fled north, seeking refuge in Scotland.
And this is where the esoteric baton is passed. The surviving Templars embed themselves in Scotland, and the lost knowledge they carry seeds the foundation of Scottish Rite Freemasonry.
The ancient secrets of geometry, physics, and architecture become encoded directly into the allegorical degrees and symbols of the Masonic lodges.
Which is brilliant.
It is a brilliant way to preserve highly dangerous knowledge in plain sight. And this Masonic network slowly permeates European society over time.
Right.
Fast forward to the 1600s, and this lineage surfaces again with the founding of the Royal Society of England.
The Royal Society, I mean, people usually think of them as a bunch of guys in powdered wigs looking at bugs under microscopes.
Right, traditional science.
But it was actually founded by Sir Robert Moray, who was a prominent Freemason.
Yeah.
These weren't just standard academics. They were philosopher-scientists, alchemists, hermeticists.
Yes.
They were actively, consciously seeking to decode and reconstruct the lost technology of the forgotten world, using the fragments passed down through those Templar networks.
The British branch of this network is fascinating in its own right. But the most dangerous consequential application of this stolen knowledge happens when we track the other group of knights who sacked Constantinople.
The Teutonic Knights.
The Teutonic Knights. After the Crusades, they returned to their homeland in northern Europe. They had conquered Prussia in the 13th century and basically established a sovereign, highly militarized monastic state.
Right.
They brought the ancient secrets with them, and as we move into the 18th and early 19th centuries, the Kingdom of Prussia becomes a terrifying, state-sponsored incubator for radical technological leaps.
Prussia in the 18th century is just wild. You have the Enlightenment happening across Europe, right? Everyone is talking about reason and science and logic.
Right.
But the Prussian version of the Enlightenment is uniquely dark. It is deeply, inextricably blended with intense mysticism, the occult, alchemy.
Yeah, they didn't separate the two.
You have King Frederick the Great, who is a brilliant military tactician, but he is also an active Freemason and a massive patron of esoteric research. He is actively protecting and funding occult schools and secret fraternities.
And to truly understand the psychological profile and, frankly, the moral elasticity of the Prussian scientific community at this time, Bosley introduces us to figures like Johann Conrad Dippel.
Oh, man, Dippel.
Dippel was born in 1673 at Castle Frankenstein.
Wait, literally Castle Frankenstein?
Yes, the actual Castle Frankenstein near Darmstadt. He was a theologian, a philosopher, and a radical alchemist.
He is literally the historical inspiration for Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
He really is.
Tell us what this guy was doing, because it perfectly illustrates the mindset of the people who eventually build these aerospace programs.
Okay, so Dippel was obsessed with the concept of the soul and mechanics of life. He conducted avid, highly controversial dissections of stolen cadavers.
Grave robbing, basically.
Yeah, he was experimenting with transferring the soul or the life force from one corpse to another using, like, funnels and hoses.
That is horrifying.
Very. He developed an incredibly foul-smelling concoction made from destructively distilling crushed animal bones, which became known as Dippel's oil, claiming it was the literal elixir of life.
And while he's, boiling bones trying to become immortal, he accidentally co-invents Prussian blue.
Which is wild. It is one of the first synthetic chemical pigments, which actually revolutionized the dye industry at the time.
It did.
This is the exact environment we are dealing with. It's an environment where brilliant chemistry and legitimate scientific breakthroughs are happening right alongside literal grave robbing and soul transference experiments.
That is the crucial point. They did not separate the mystical from the mechanical.
Right.
To the Prussian philosopher-scientists, decoding a text on ancient alchemy was just as vital as improving a steam engine.
It was all the same science to them.
Exactly, and they were driven by a massive, all-consuming geopolitical goal. In the early 19th century, Germany as a unified nation did not exist yet.
No.
It was a fractured, chaotic collection of over 30 independent states. The Prussian elite had a singular vision to unify these states under Prussian rule and forge a dominant global German empire.
And they believed the way to achieve this wasn't just through, traditional artillery or bigger cannons. They believed they could achieve total global hegemony by unlocking and weaponizing the recovered technology of the ancient world. They wanted to resurrect the physics of the nameless ones.
Exactly. The fusion of romantic German nationalism, highly disciplined militarized industry, and occult physics created the perfect storm.
Right.
But they faced a massive logistical hurdle.
Location.
Yes. If you are a secret Prussian society trying to develop radical disruptive technology, say an anti-gravity propulsion engine, you cannot build and test it in the middle of Europe.
Right. If you fire up a screaming, glowing torsion engine in a field outside Berlin in 1850, the British, the French, the Russians, they're going to notice immediately.
You'd have spies all over you.
You will be invaded before you even get off the ground. You need a frontier. You need an environment with zero oversight, zero governmental regulation, and complete isolation.
You need a place exactly like the American West in the 1850s. Which brings us to the astonishing concrete evidence of the first modern breakaway civilization. We are leaving the alchemical castles of Prussia and traveling to the rugged, lawless frontier of California.
Finally, we're at the gold rush.
Specifically, Tuolumne County, smack in the middle of the gold rush.
This is where the story pivots from ancient history and medieval heists into hard, verifiable 19th century documentation.
Hard evidence, yes.
I want you to picture the scene. It's 1968. A man named Fred Washington is walking through a municipal garbage dump in Houston, Texas.
A literal garbage dump.
Right. And sitting in the trash, destined for the incinerator, he spots a pile of massive, heavy books. He rescues them and takes them to his antique shop.
And those books were the life's work of Charles A. Delschow.
The butcher we mentioned at the start.
Yes. Delschow was a Prussian immigrant who arrived in the United States in the mid-19th century. For most of his public life, he was a nobody. He worked as a butcher, a clerk, a saddle maker.
Just a normal guy.
But between 1899 and his death in 1923, he locked himself in his attic room in Texas and created over a dozen massive scrapbooks.
What was in them?
They contain thousands of intricate, highly detailed watercolor paintings of bizarre flying machines, accompanied by cryptic, heavily coded German text.
And for years, art critics just thought he was a crazy outsider artist, right? Painting steampunk fantasy.
It's dead.
But then, an artist and researcher named Pete Navarro bought the books and spent 30 years cracking Delschau's complex code.
30 years?
Yeah, and what he found was earth-shattering. Delschow explicitly stated he wasn't painting fantasies. He was acting as the draftsman and documentarian for a highly secretive organization he belonged to called the Sonora Aero Club.
According to the decoded journals, the Sonora Aero Club was operating deep in the California wilderness near the town of Columbia in Tuolumne County, roughly between 1854 and 1858.
Okay.
The club consisted of about 60 members, almost entirely German immigrants. They were led by a brilliant, eccentric mining engineer named Peter Menace. And what were they building? Delschow called them arrows.
And to be clear, they weren't building hot air balloons. They weren't building primitive gliders with canvas wings.
No, the arrows were fundamentally proof-of-concept anti-gravity machines.
I know how insane this sounds to a modern ear. A bunch of cowboys and Prussian immigrants flying anti-gravity UFOs in California before the Civil War.
It sounds like sci-fi.
It does. But if you look at Delschau's drawings, they actually ground the entire story in a weird sort of reality.
How so?
The arrows don't look like sleek, polished silver saucers from a 1950s movie. They look messy. They look clunky. They have wooden frameworks, canvas flaps, iron landing wheels, exposed external rigging.
Right.
They look exactly like what a mid-19th century prototype built by a bunch of engineers in a barn should look like.
But technology Delschow describes is a fascinating, highly specific blend of 19th century chemistry and advanced theoretical physics.
Okay, let's get into the physics.
According to the journals, Peter Menace had developed a proprietary secret chemical formula he called the SUPE, S-U-P-E. This was a fluid created by mixing water with highly specific, unidentified chemicals. The reaction produced something Menace called NB gas.
The NB gas is the secret sauce of the whole operation.
It is the core of the propulsion system. But crucially, this gas was not used for buoyancy, like helium or hydrogen in a blimp.
So it wasn't just lifting them up like a balloon.
No. The gas was pumped into a complex, rotating mechanical drum within the arrow.
A drum.
Right. The high-speed spinning of this highly reactive gas actually created a localized torsion field.
Okay, let me try to explain this with an analogy because torsion fields are incredibly dense physics.
Please do.
Think of a washing machine on the spin cycle. When it spins fast enough, the centrifugal force creates a localized environment inside the drum where the clothes are completely pinned to the walls, momentarily overriding the normal pull of gravity downward into the water.
Right.
Now, scale that up mathematically. Menace's rotating drum of NB gas was spinning fast enough to generate an electromagnetic torsion field that actively severed, or canceled, the craft's interaction with the Earth's local gravity well.
Yes.
It essentially created a localized bubble of zero mass.
That is an excellent way to visualize it. It provided incredible lift and directional propulsion without any need for aerodynamic wings.
Amazing.
But this brings us to a massive question regarding their location. Why Tuolumne County?
Right.
Yes, it was isolated, and yes, being in the middle of the gold rush meant that a group of Germans buying massive amounts of chemicals, lumber, and iron wouldn't raise any suspicion. Everyone was building mining equipment.
Sure, they blended in.
But Bosley introduces Sesh-Heary's analysis to explain the true geographic necessity of their location.
It wasn't just about hiding, it was about fuel.
Exactly. Sesh-Heary posits that the location of the Sonora Aero Club was entirely dictated by the presence of telluric currents.
Okay, telluric currents. Explain this mechanism to us. What are they?
Telluric currents are naturally occurring, extremely low-frequency ELF electrical currents that constantly flow through the Earth's crust and oceans.
Okay.
The Earth is, effectively, a massive spinning magnetic dynamo. These currents are influenced by the sun, the Earth's magnetic field, and most importantly, geology.
Right.
They do not flow evenly. They concentrate and surge along specific geological features, particularly massive fault lines and areas with dense conductive mineral deposits.
Like, for instance, massive veins of gold and quartz in the Sierra Nevada mountains.
Precisely. The California Gold Country is sitting on top of a massive, hyperdense network of these electromagnetic currents.
Wow.
The theory presented by Heary and Bosley is that Menace's early aero prototypes were not powerful enough to generate independent, limitless flight.
Okay, so they had limits.
Right. The rotating NB gas drum provided the lift, effectively making the craft weightless. But to actually move and navigate, the arrows had to lock onto and ride the Earth's natural telluric currents.
They were sailing the electromagnetic grid of the planet.
Yes.
Just like a 19th century clipper ship couldn't just sail anywhere. It had to follow the physical trade winds and ocean currents. These early anti-gravity machines had to navigate the invisible rivers of energy flowing through the Earth's crust.
That's like a perfect analogy.
They set up their secret base in Tuolumne County because it was sitting directly on top of the largest natural power cables on the continent.
It is a stunning integration of geology and advanced physics. But Peter Menace and his group of eccentric engineers were not an independent, self-funded startup.
Right, this stuff isn't cheap.
Building these machines required massive capital. It required logistical support. Delshaw's diaries make it explicitly clear that the Sonora Aero Club was taking orders from and being funded by a massive, shadowy benefactor back in the Prussian homeland.
What did Delshaw call this shadow organization in his coded journals?
He referred to them simply as NYMZA.
NYMZA, the exact same word.
The very same.
The ancient Egyptian-derived esoteric term for the nameless, the banished sea gods who possessed humans and sparked technological rebellions.
Yeah.
The Prussian elites funding this aerospace program intentionally co-opted the most terrifying name in ancient occult history to mask their modern organization.
Exactly.
They shrouded a 19th century black-budget weapons program in the mystique of the Book of Enoch and the ancient cosmic war.
It was an incredibly effective psychological cover. It projected this aura of ancient, unstoppable power while maintaining total anonymity.
Absolutely.
But Bosley's research takes the analysis of the word NYMZA a critical step further.
Okay.
He recognizes that Delshaw was a German immigrant, writing in phonetic German. When you apply standard German transliteration rules to the acronym NYMZA, the spelling actually shifts.
How so?
The Y becomes a J, the word becomes NJMZA. NJMZA.
And what happens when you treat that as a literal German military acronym?
In German, NJMZA stands for Nationalistische Jagdflugzeugmaschinenzahlungsamt,
Which translates into English as
the Nationalist Pursuit Exploration Airship Program Office.
boom. It isn't just a spooky occult word. It is a literal, functional acronym for a state-sponsored Prussian Military Industrial Program Office.
Yes.
It's the 1850s equivalent of DARPA. They named their Black Ops airship program using an acronym that phonetically spelled out the name of ancient gods. It is diabolical.
It is a masterpiece of operational security. But the rabbit hole goes one layer deeper, and this is where the research of Dr. Joseph P. Farrell absolutely shattered my understanding of this history.
Oh man, what did Farrell find?
Farrell was analyzing the specific, highly stylized way Del Shao drew the letters NYMZA in his artwork. He realized they weren't just decorative letters. Del Shao was using the acronym itself to hide a complex quantum physics equation.
An equation hidden inside the name of the organization. Okay, breaks this down for us. What is the equation?
The symbols Del Shao used mathematically translate to the equation D equals X phi.
D equals X phi.
Let's unpack the physics here. The D represents a capital delta, which in physics symbolizes a change or a difference in mass.
Okay, difference in mass.
The equals sign is standard. The X represents a variable, specifically an electrical susceptibility transform.
Right.
And the final symbol, which Del Shao disguised to look like a stylized letter A, is actually the Greek letter phi.
Phi.
In advanced physics, phi represents scalar potential.
Okay, I have to stop you. What exactly is scalar potential in plain English? Because if this is the secret to anti-gravity, we really need to understand it.
In classical electromagnetism, we are used to transverse waves, like radio waves or light, which move up and down as they travel forward.
Sure, like ripples on a pond.
Scalar waves are entirely different. They are longitudinal waves, often described as standing waves. They are created when two identical electromagnetic waves intersect from opposite directions, effectively canceling out their directional movement and creating a localized pressure zone of pure energy.
A pressure zone.
That is a scalar potential. By manipulating this scalar field, theoretical physicists believe you can alter the local gravitational constant. You can fundamentally change the mass of an object within that field.
So let me summarize this equation. D equals X phi.
Go for it.
Del Shao is writing. The change in an object's mass difference equals the transform of X multiplied by the scalar potential.
Exactly.
He literally hid the mathematical formula for the torsion anti-gravity engine. The exact physics required to cancel mass inside the acronym of the shadow group that funded its creation.
It's incredible.
It is a three-tiered cryptographic masterpiece. It's an ancient occult name, a German military acronym, and a quantum physics equation, all wrapped into 5 letters.
It demonstrates the staggering level of intellect and sophistication operating within this Prussian network. So you have this highly advanced technology functioning successfully in the mountains of California.
Right.
Peter Menes is flying these craft. The proof of concept is validated. What happens next? How does the Sonora Aero Club narrative end?
It ends the way every disruptive technology story ends, with a hostile corporate takeover.
According to Del Shao's diaries, once the arrows were proven to work, the dynamic drastically shifted. A representative arrives at the camp in California directly from Germany.
Uh-oh.
Del Shao explicitly identifies him as a Prussian military officer. This officer isn't interested in exploration or the joy of flight. He demands that Peter Menes and the club immediately weaponize the arrows for the fatherland.
Of course he does.
The Prussian NYMZA wants to militarize the technology to achieve their goal of dominating the European continent and forging a unified German empire.
They want to strap bombs to the arrows.
Essentially, yes.
And Peter Menes, to his immense credit as an engineer and just a human being, looks this Prussian military officer in the eye and says absolutely not.
He stands his ground.
He vehemently refuses to turn his life's work, his miracle of physics, into a flying war machine.
He draws a hard line, and the consequences are immediate and brutal.
Yeah.
Shortly after this heated confrontation with the Prussian officer, Peter Menes suffers a catastrophic, highly suspicious accident. He is caught in what is described as an arrow fire.
An arrow fire.
He is severely burned and dies from his injuries.
It was an assassination. They killed him to either silence his refusal or to steal the remaining prototypes.
The narrative heavily implies foul play. And because Menes was intensely paranoid and kept the exact chemical formula for his soup fluid entirely in his head, the club loses its fuel source.
He took it to the grave.
He did. Without Menes and the NB gas, the Sonora Aero Club fractures and completely dissolves by 1860. The members scatter. Del Shao eventually moves to Texas and begins his decades of silent documentation.
But the technology doesn't die in that fire. The Prussian NYMZA program office doesn't just throw their hands up and say, well, we lost the formula, let's go back to building steam trains.
No, of course not.
They have the blueprints. They have the physics equation.
Precisely. The research continues, moving even deeper into the shadows. According to Del Shao, another figure on the periphery of the club steps into the vacuum.
Who was that?
A man named Tosh Wilson. Wilson takes Menace's fundamental torsion field concepts and massively scales them up.
Okay.
While Menace's original arrows were small, precarious one- or two-man contraptions, Delschow documents that Tosh Wilson successfully developed an advanced craft called the Arrow EE.
And the specs on the Arrow EE are terrifying.
They really are.
Delschow notes that Wilson's craft wasn't a fragile prototype. It was capable of carrying a 30,000-pound payload of passengers and freight.
30,000 pounds. We're no longer talking about an experimental glider. We're talking about an operational heavy-lift flying cargo ship.
An anti-gravity dreadnought.
Yes. And the successful development of the Arrow E sets the exact, undeniable stage for the next massive chapter in this hidden history.
The great airship mystery of the 1890s.
That's the one.
If you look at the historical newspapers from the winter of 1896 and the spring of 1897, so 40 years after the Sonora Aero Club dissolved, you'll find thousands of reports across the United States.
Coast to coast.
From California to Texas to the Midwest, thousands of people, including mayors, police officers, and entire towns, witnessed massive structured airships flying slowly over their cities at night, equipped with brilliant, high-powered searchlights.
Mainstream historians have desperately tried to write off the 1897 airship wave as mass hysteria, a hoax perpetrated by newspaper editors or people just misidentifying the planet Venus.
Right, the swamp gas excuse.
Exactly. But Bosley's research connects the dots directly. The massive airships seen by thousands of Americans in 1897 were the direct, scaled-up operational descendants of Tosh Wilson's Arrow EE and Peter Menace's original torsion field prototypes.
They were test flights. The Prussian NYMZA program had successfully advanced the technology, fully weaponized it, and was casually flying it over American skies to test its range and capabilities.
This is the true, documented birth of the military-industrial complex as we know it today. It is a hostile corporate takeover of a profoundly disruptive technology executed entirely in the shadows 150 years ago.
Wow.
They took the recovered physics of the ancient world, the blueprint of the gods, and successfully weaponized it for the modern era.
It completely reframes everything. Let's briefly summarize this incredible, exhausting journey we've taken today.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground.
We started in the deepest antiquity, analyzing the myths of banished sea gods, the nameless ones, the NYMZA, who lost a cosmic war and seeded humanity with advanced technology to build a proxy army.
Right.
We tracked the physical footprints of that lost science, from the plasma petroglyphs at Los Alamos to the gears of the Antiquity mechanism.
We followed the survival of that knowledge from the burning library of Alexandria to the vaults of Constantinople. We detailed how the Knights Templar and Teutonic Knights orchestrated the ultimate intellectual heist during the Fourth Crusade, carrying those ancient physics back to the alchemical laboratories of Prussia.
And finally, we tracked how a militarized Prussian Black Ops office, hiding behind the ancient name of NYMZA, funded a group of immigrants in the 1850s California wilderness.
Unbelievable.
They successfully built localized torsion field anti-gravity machines, sailed them along the Earth's telluric currents, and eventually scaled them into massive 30,000-pound cargo ships that swept across the American sky in 1897.
The central thesis here is undeniable. The Breakaway civilization is not a modern science fiction trope invented to explain the Cold War UFO phenomenon. It is a deeply entrenched, highly organized, multi-generational human pursuit of lost physics.
Look, if you're listening to this and you're still thinking, this is a massive leap to assume a shadow group has been flying UFOs since the 1850s.
It's a big pill to swallow.
It is. But let's look at the modern equivalent. Look at how DARPA and the black budget defense world operate today. Look at the SR-71 Blackbird.
Great example.
That jet was flying at Mach 3 on the edge of space in the early 1960s, years before the public even knew the technology was theoretically possible.
Yeah.
The military is always, at a minimum, decades ahead of the commercial sector. Now apply that exact same black budget playbook, that exact same level of secrecy and funding to the highly motivated Prussian military establishment in the 1850s.
It is entirely logically consistent. If they achieved localized mass cancellation in 1856 and then took that technology entirely dark, operating without public scrutiny or financial limitations.
Imagine what they could build.
Exactly. The resultant technological tree would look like magic to us today.
Which leaves us with a final, deeply provocative thought for you to mull over.
Okay.
If a Prussian black budget program office had functional, torsion-based anti-gravity technology functioning over 150 years ago, well, actually, if they took it entirely off the grid back then,
Yeah.
What exactly is it that people have been seeing in the skies for the last 80 years?
That's the real question.
When military pilots film glowing, tic-tac-shaped objects defying inertia over the ocean, when thousands of people look up at those murky, diagnostic waters of modern UFO sightings, are we really seeing extraterrestrial visitors arriving from Zeta Reticuli?
Probably not.
Or are we just looking at the great-great-grandchildren of a 19th century breakaway civilization that simply never stopped upgrading their engines? Keep looking closely at the blueprint. The basement of human history is vastly deeper and vastly darker than you think.